are going to kick off part 2 with Ann B. Kim. Ann is a mixed media artist who has been living in Dayton since 2009. Her current obsessions include the concept of time, space, place, antipodes, connecting with people, adventures, collecting dirt and trash, and roaming around the world. In 2017, she circumnavigated the globe as part of her research, during which time she completed the Trans-Siberian Railway, which is the longest railway in the world. She is currently an associate professor of fine arts at Indiana University East, and here with us tonight, let's welcome Ann.
Hi again. Hi. Okay. So in 2016, I had this crazy idea that for my next art project about time and how we experience time and place, that I had to circumnavigate the globe in the opposite direction of the Earth's rotation, hence quote-unquote time, and complete the entirety of the Trans-Siberian Railway as a part of this journey. So I spent the next year to make this happen. I got a Russian tourist visa, which proved to me that post-Soviet bureaucracy was alive and well. Bought 3 books about the railway, researched the train route, and decided on the first few cities, and bought those tickets, applied for a sabbatical, and downloaded a Cyrillic keyboard on my smartphone. To give you an idea about the sheer length of this train, it is almost 6,000 miles long between Vladivostok and Moscow. Vladivostok is pictured here, which is right above North Korea. And it was actually the closest major city I could visit to where my grandfather was born and raised in North Korea before defecting at the age of 17. And if you never get off, it takes 7 days to complete, and you go through 7 different time zones. Thinking of myself as an artist wanderer and an amateur explorer on this performative journey, and also a personal pilgrimage, I start to produce and collect ephemera, sending postcards to myself, collecting my daily trash as a way to count time when your days were no longer 24 hours long, and collecting dirt from each of the cities I stopped in. I must admit that the first few cities I visited in Siberia completely shatter whatever preconceived picture I have of the place. Granted, I went in May. I was walking around in the sun, drinking fancy cocktails, and passing by places called Woodstock. And I kept thinking, wait, this is where people were sent to exile, like Dostoevsky. The train rides themselves were unlike anything I had experienced before. Each car had its own conductor who would check my ticket and my ID, take me to my bunk, and give me this very iconic goblet-esque glass mug for tea that I absolutely had to return at the end of each leg. Another important thing I found out was that all the trains run in Moscow time. I remember wondering why all these trains were leaving at 2 a.m. when I was trying to book my first overnight train, then realizing it was actually 9 a.m. local time. And it was as if all the Russians just knew where they were, no matter where they were thrown off in Russia. When booking your ticket, you can see what type of train it is, and some are significantly nicer than others. There are 3 classes you can choose from, and I always opted for the coupe, which is a second class, shared with 3 other people. Here was my longest leg continuous train ride, which was almost 58 hours long, nonstop. Here's what the bed looks like, where I slept then for 2 of the nights, except I think I just slept most of the time. And as you can see, the top bunk folds out into a bed. And usually during the day, people just kind of hang out at the bottom and they go up to sleep whenever they're ready. I was almost always the only female in the coupe, but not once did I feel uncomfortable or unsafe. In fact, I felt like my bunkmates were looking after me, teaching me how to get hot water, helping me with bags. When I was sleeping on the wrong side, telling me to turn over. Buying me almonds and peanuts when they found that I was vegetarian, and teaching me how to take vodka shots like a Russian. Although instead of eating a piece of meat after each shot, I opted for Trader Joe's green olives I packed with me in my bag. This here shows what my typical supplies were for these long train rides that I would buy from the little shops at the station that we would stop every maybe 5 to 6 hours, like beer, bread, pickles. What was fascinating was how my mind completely lost all sense of time during these 40-plus hour rides, or a multiple of those. It was as if my mind gave up quantifying and just started to absorb everything around me, the repetitive sound of the train tracks, the vast landscape that was incredibly beautiful and peaceful. Of course, it was always the last 5 hours that felt like eternity. The place I spent the most of the time there was an Olkhon Island in Lake Baikal, which has the deepest point of any freshwater lakes in the world. It took 6 hours of car ride from the nearest train stop, half of which was unpaved road, an hour of ferry ride. It's in the middle of Buryatia land, occupied by Russian-speaking ethnic Mongolians, who are the indigenous people groups of the area. And you can see a lot of the remnants of the shamanistic practices. And here you can see the oboes, which are kind of this prayer ribbons, and then the rock you see behind is a very sacred rock that stores thoughts of your violence. Some of the other things I got to see that are really awesome were these 2,000-year-old rock carvings. If you look very closely, you can see shapes of animals and some people. And physically touching these, this drawing, a mark that somebody left 2,000 years ago, somehow made me feel like I was viscerally linked to something ancient and transcendental. Other unexpected findings were some Buddhist temples near Ulan-Ude. This particular one is Ivolgensky Datsan, which opened in 1945 and was the only approved Buddhist temple by Stalin. I don't know how they convinced him, but they did. Although I was traveling alone, I did meet other adventurous travelers along the way, mostly travelers from Western Europe. And the photo on the left was taken after a group tour through a national park where we had to be in this old Soviet Jeep to get through the landscape. It was kind of like a UN assembly, it seemed. And many of those travelers were actually connecting to Chinese Mongolian line, or China Mongolian line, which actually meets Trans-Siberian and going through to China and then to Korea and Japan and then circling around to Europe. It seemed like a very popular thing for them to do. And I still keep in touch with most of them. Then, of course, there are the Russian bunkmates I met who were very kind, funny, generous, and curious what I was doing there, taking photos every time the time zone changed. And also, very importantly, they do not hate Americans. And and we use Google Translate to communicate, and many were visiting family, but even more were traveling to and from these long-term jobs. Then I got to Moscow, and it immediately got gray and rainy, and I thought, please take me back to Siberia. And I wanted to spend a couple more days, but I was advised never to overstay my tourist visa because I can end in jail. So I got on my plane and continued my journey west.